Konnichiwa. Tashidade. Assalamu alaikum. Marhaba. Annyeonghaseyo. And welcome everyone. Thank you so much, Majid, for those kind words, and more importantly for your wonderful example as a champion of human dignity and freedom. Thank you so much for your kind words, Mr. Makino Sheshu. Welcome to Canada. First, let me welcome all of our visiting international delegates to Canada. Thank you for making the trouble to come all the way here to our sometimes cold but always hospitable and free country. Welcome to Canada. I'm delighted to be here on the podium with parliamentary colleagues Judy Scrow, Wayne Marston, former Senator Danino, and to be in the presence of one of my political heroes in Canada, former Minister, the Honourable David Kilgour, who is one of the greatest friends of the Chinese people. And I'm also pleased especially to welcome visitors from the People's Republic of China, Mr. Yao Jianfu, Ms. Ms. Gao Yu, Mr. Li Weidong, and Mr. Yang Zili. Welcome, and thank you for your courage, your witness, your example, and your presence amongst us. Friends, I want to thank my dear friend Sheng Zhu and her entire team of volunteers for bringing us together here today and throughout this conference. This is a wonderful opportunity for experts, parliamentarians, members of civil society from many countries to share information and discuss the best approaches to promote the fundamental human rights grounded in the dignity of the human person. Canada, as Sheng suggested, is proud to be one of a model of freedom and democracy and human rights in the world. We are imperfect in Canada. We can always do better. We strive to be a better model. But somehow, through brilliant, strong institutions and a tradition of ordered liberty, we have become a hospitable country to people from every corner of the world. And we share certain common values, one of which is a belief in the inviolable dignity of the human person. But we Canadians believe that this is not a Canadian value. We do not believe it's a unique reflection of our own culture. We rather believe that this is a universal value. And we reject the notion that human dignity and the human rights that flow from it are particular to any particular culture. Those who suggest that Asian cultures in general, or Chinese Confucian culture in particular, are somehow inconsistent with democratic values, I think misunderstand the universality of those values and the aspiration that lies in the heart of every human person to achieve their potential in freedom. So what you'll be discussing this week is how we can advance the natural human longing for freedom. The title of your conference is about democratization. Democracy doesn't simply mean a form of majority rule. It certainly doesn't mean the sort of artificial democracy we see in some countries with fake opposition parties and fake elections. Democracy means a system of government predicated on human dignity, where the dignity of the person transcends the power of the state. And we know that in many parts of the world today, including in particularly Asia, the power of the state overwhelms and subsumes the dignity of the person. We see this today in the world's largest concentration camp in North Korea, where for now 70 years people have been living in a society that resembles a gulag. And we think of them today at this conference. This abuse of the authority of the state continues in Vietnam, where political prisoners, religious leaders, people like Father Thupten Wangyal, Buddhist monks, Protestant pastors, democratic dissidents swelter in political re-education camps and in jails. We see it, of course, regrettably in China, a great rising country that should be proud of its growing prosperity and social development in so many ways, but where sadly political prisoners continue to be punished in Laogai camps, and those who seek legitimate aspirations for their people, like the Tibetan and Uyghur people and others, are often punished and even face violent persecution. And so we say to all of those in those parts of Asia and around the world who continue to face this kind of authoritarianism and sometimes even brutality, that Canadians are in solidarity with them. And they need to know that, they need to hear that. I'm very proud to be a member of a government whose Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, has said that in our foreign policy, Canada will no longer go along to get along. We will articulate our principled belief in human freedom, democracy, and human rights, even when it is inconvenient. Just as he said on his way to the APEC summit in 2006 that, quotes, Canadians want us to promote our trade relations worldwide, and we do that, but I don't think Canadians want us to sell out important Canadian values. They don't want us to sell out to the almighty dollar. And indeed, this was reflected in Prime Minister Harper's difficult, but I think correct decision last week not to attend the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Colombo, Sri Lanka, another Asian country where there is a need for stronger protection for human rights. He took that position precisely because he believes that organizations like the Commonwealth should have objective standards about democracy and protection for human and civil rights. So I want to thank all of you for continuing the struggle in which you are engaged, a noble struggle. I know that many of you often feel that you are at the margins. Many of you have paid a dear price. Some of the people in this room have spent years behind bars. Many of you, simply by being here, may put members of your families at risk. You have limited your economic and career potential, many of you. And some of you have faced harassment, regrettably, even here in Canada, for doing what is right, for speaking truth to power. So let me say from the bottom of my heart how much I respect all of you who are engaged in this struggle for freedom, human dignity, and human rights. Finally, let me say that one historical political feature that we find in common in much of the violations of human freedoms in Asia over the past century is the toxic ideology of communism. And Canada is so proud to have received, as newcomers, millions of people who fled communist totalitarianism around the world. Some of them are in this room. And this is why the Government of Canada is working with a coalition of different community groups called Tribute to Liberty to build a national monument to memorialize the victims of communism in our nation's capital, in Ottawa. We want this to become a place of common memory, where people from the Tibetan, the Uyghur, the Chinese, the Korean, the Vietnamese, the Polish, Ukrainian, Russian, and so many other communities can gather as a place of common memory, and to acknowledge that a particularly pernicious ideology was responsible for the deaths of tens of millions in the last century, what Pope John Paul II referred to as the century of tears. I want therefore to encourage your support for and practical support for the construction of our national monument to the victims of communism called A Tribute to Liberty, which will on the one hand remember the victims of this evil ideology, not just in the past, but those who continue to be victimized today, and also will be a place where we can celebrate Canada as a land of freedom. Thank you very much. 谢谢.
And decided to help people. And at that time,